Hey, this is Chris Hammond with ChrisStock.com. In this video, I'm going to show you how I use PowerShell and ChatGPT to create scripts that I can use to update Jekyll-based websites. So I've got a Jekyll site, autocrossblog.com. Has, I don't know, a couple hundred posts on it. Many of them didn't have meta descriptions in it. So I wrote a PowerShell script, or I had ChatGPT write a PowerShell script last week that went through and updated all the blog posts with meta descriptions. What I failed to do was to update those posts with last updated timestamps. So I want to use ChatGPT to create a script that'll do that for us. So I've got a prompt here in Visual Studio Code that I'm going to leverage as my kind of starting point. So I'm going to go ahead and copy that. We'll paste that into ChatGPT here in a moment. But you can go ahead and pause the video, take a look through what that prompt is actually doing if you care to see the details. Before we do that, though, let me switch over here to repository where I've got all of these blog posts. So I've got a blog post pulled up here. It's from July 10th, 2024, posted around 10 a.m. It has a last modified at attribute on it, but it's commented out. And the date is invalid. It's actually before the post was made. So what I want to do is I want to have ChatGPT write a PowerShell script that will update that, uncomment the commented out attribute, update the date, and if there's any blog posts in this repository that don't have a last modified at attribute, I want to add it with the appropriate date. So that's kind of what we're starting with. Once we run the script, we'll come back and take a look at what the results look like here on this particular blog post. So if I switch over here in browser, we're going to go over, take a look at the website. This is that particular blog post we're looking at, July 10th, 2024. In ChatGPT, I'm going to go ahead and load up. I'm using the paid version, so I have access to the 4.0 model. I'm going to go ahead and paste my prompt in here. So it's creating a PowerShell script that will filter through the post directory in a Jekyll repo. I want to add, if it doesn't exist, or update, if it does exist, the last modified at YAML attribute in each of the blog posts to be based on the last modified date timestamp of the file. If it already exists, make sure it isn't commented out when you update it. Be sure to insert the last modified at the end of the existing YAML if you need to add it. Don't duplicate it. And here's a path to my post folder, just so it'll have kind of that path within the script that gets created. So if I go ahead and click on the arrow there, submit that into ChatGPT, ChatGPT is going to go through the process of creating that PowerShell script for me. So it'll take a moment while it generates that. Once it's done generating, what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy all of that code and put it into a PowerShell file within a different instance of Visual Studio Code that I've already got open. So I can go ahead and click on the copy code option there, and I'll switch over here to Visual Studio Code. And I have a file called updatelastmodified.ps1. If I open that, it's currently empty. So I'm going to go ahead and paste the output from ChatGPT into that particular PS1 file. Okay, so that is the file. Now I'm going to go over here to a different PowerShell window that I've got open, and I'm going to call the update last modified.ps1 script. So if I go ahead and hit enter, that's going to go ahead and try to run. Now, this particular script didn't have any debugging or logging, didn't visually tell us what was going on, other than it says processing complete. So the default script that ChatGPT created didn't have any outputs as it was working through the file. That's okay. If we switch back over here to the Visual Studio Code where we've got the repository open, you can see that blog post has now been updated. So the blog post has a new line 13, which says last modified at. Now it has the date 2024, 10/9, October 9th. So that was the last modified date for this particular file. Now, one thing it didn't do is it didn't wrap it in quotes. I'm not sure if we need that or not. We'll find out when we go through and work on the build of this. It did not uncomment the previous last modified at, so it just left it there for cleanup purposes. We could go ahead and remove that. Let's go ahead and scroll up in the repo though and see if there's any other files that have been modified. And if we scroll back up here all the way to the posts around 2011, we can see that they are yellow in Visual Studio Code. So that's telling us that those have been modified. And if we open up the first one here, GoPro firmware upgrade, it has a new last modified update actually is last modified update of 10:51 this morning. And if we scroll through, we can start to see all of these other blog posts that have last modified date additions. Now, some of them are in the middle of the YAML. Some of them are at the end. If they already existed, that's why they're in the middle. I had already put that into the content, and it was just updating where it already was. If it wasn't there, then it's putting it at the end. Now, in this case, it created last modified date. Like I said, it doesn't have the single quotes around it. Let's actually just go back over here to our prompt and ask ChatGPT if that's going to be a problem. So those last modified at attributes are not wrapped in quotes. Do they need to be? So ChatGPT says, no, it's not necessary. The YAML will interpret it as a string, so we should be good to go. Now, let's just go ahead and in PowerShell, let me go ahead and work through testing this out, make sure we're not going to have any issues. So I am inside of a PowerShell window. I'm going to scroll back here to start up WSL. So Windows Subsystem for Linux, that's going to go ahead and fire up a Linux machine where I can do a compilation of the Jekyll post here, or the Jekyll site, actually do a bundle and a serve. That's going to go through and tell Jekyll to essentially build out the site. This is a decent sized site, and WSL doesn't give a whole lot of performance resources to WSL. So it takes a little bit for that generation to occur, but it should go through here and generate those posts. And we'll wait for that to occur. While I'm doing that, what we're going to end up trying to do is we're going to load up this local build that's occurring, and we'll compare this particular blog post from my production website that's currently published and that local build, just to see the difference with last modified date being added to it. So the local site is going to be running at 127.0.0.1/4000. I'm going to paste on the slug there for the permalink for that blog post. Now, currently, the local build hasn't completed, so the web server is not up and running yet. We're not going to see the results until it tells us that it's finished publishing. So we'll go ahead and wait for that to occur. I'll try to trim out the video here. Actually, now it tells us it's done in 66 seconds, so it took just over a minute to do that build. Now that website should be running, and if I go ahead and refresh that local URL, you could see now that we've got updated October 9th, 2024 at 14:49, so 2:49 in the afternoon, versus the production version of this site right now doesn't have that last updated date timestamp showing up. So in this case, we've got a PowerShell script that went through and added the last modified date to all of our blog posts within the repository, updated any that needed to be updated, and now that should be rendered across all the pages, all the blog posts on the site. So from here, what I would do is I'd go ahead and do a commit, publish my changes. So all this website's hosted on GitHub using GitHub Pages. So I would publish my commit, push it out. That would then go through the actions process, the deployment process, and get this changes deployed out to the production hosting where the actual website, the domain, is in use. So that's just a brief video here to tell you or show you how that I use ChatGPT with Jekyll sites. I've got a couple other scripts that I've worked on here. I will show you one called last commit time. So in working through the process for this video, if you run through a script and you want to do a rollback in Git, if you do a restore, what ends up happening when you do a restore in Git, if you kind of undo all your changes, it restores everything back, and every file in the restore gets a new last updated date. It gets the date of when you did the restore, which in this case would have caused every blog post of mine when I ran the script to be updated at the exact same time today. And that's not what I was looking for. So I ended up creating, with ChatGPT, created a script here that updates the last modified date for a file in Windows based on the last commit date or the committed change to that file in the Git repository. So that kind of allowed me to go back and update the date timestamp on the files themselves, which our new PowerShell script was using to build or to do the updates. So just a little bit of a cleanup there. Hopefully my intention is to kind of have some additional videos, additional PowerShell scripts that I create for various Jekyll posts. We'll see if I get around to that or not. But if you enjoyed this Jekyll post or this PowerShell ChatGPT post on my YouTube channel here, please subscribe, like, give me some feedback. Let me know if this is interesting, if it's useful. AI is taking over the world, right? Well, it doesn't have to take over the world, but it can make you more efficient. If I had to write some of these scripts myself, it would have taken me a lot more time than working through the process here within ChatGPT. So hopefully this is useful. Again, my name is Chris Hammond. Thank you.